Welcome to another episode of the Pillow Fright Podcast. I'm Alyssa.
I'm Kay.
And I'm Emma.
And we are your three besties in all things horror.
And hey, we're back with another episode of Metal Mayhem series. Are you ready for another full episode of face-whipping metal?
I am ready to bring the funk. And by funk, I mean the thrash, the death, the black Norwegian metal.
The black Norwegian metal, if you have not guessed it yet, we are talking about Deathgasm.
I am so excited. This is like one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's so good.
I remember when this came out, it was like a big festival darling. And so, and a lot of times the festival circuit, it starts like overseas and then it goes to the East Coast. And so you're hearing the buzz before you ever get a chance to see it. So by the time this movie got to LA, I was just like, I need to see this movie now on every screen possible. And yeah, I instantly loved it. I don't know if there was ever a chance that I was not going to love this movie.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't.
No, it's really a fun one. And I love seeing movies from New Zealand. They have this, I don't know. I feel like Evil Dead should have been a New Zealand horror movie.
Oh, absolutely. It's the Peter Jackson of it all.
Yeah, this is like Evil Dead meets Ash versus Evil Dead meets craziness.
Well, Ash versus Evil Dead was filmed in New Zealand.
Yes, it was.
I love New Zealand horror. I think Dead Alive was one of the first movies that I really remember being like,
yep,
okay, I'm going to put on my big girl pants because this is what horror could be.
That was the first gross out film I think I ever saw, was that. It's still today really gross. Yeah. New Zealand knows how to make them gross. That's what I said.
Of course, there's What We Do in the Shadows.
That's my favorite New Zealand horror, comedy horror, I guess.
TV show last season starting this month.
Oh,
I'm so sad to see it go.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I actually didn't love the movie the first time I watched it, but then I was like, I'll give the show a try anyway. And then I watched Stone. I was like, oh, wait, this is great. And then I appreciated the movie more. I think maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset when I watched the movie. But also, vampires aren't normally my thing. So I don't think I was like super intrigued by it. But New Zealand does enough zombies too. So I'm in it for that.
My intro to that movie, Alyssa and I have a friend named Elric. He used to own a little movie-themed cafe called Jump Cut. And he's from New Zealand. So he would do movie nights and invite everybody and be like, so he got this Blu-ray or whatever he had his mom mail him of What We Do in the Shadows. And he had like big screening night. And I just remember thinking it was one of the most hilarious creative movies. That was like my total intro to Taika Waititi. I didn't watch Flight of the Conchords or anything like that.
I wish they did more. I want to see them forever because they're so funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, before we get into this movie, I got to talk about this little short film that Alyssa and I did for Just Scare Me a few years ago that was 100% inspired by Deathgasm and my personal obsession with metal horror.
I love how, and you pass that down to the kids.
Yeah, we did it was called Hypocritical Hit, and it was like about 4 young girls, 14, 15, who were all horror movie nerd metal chicks, and their parents were like the satanic panic 80s parents. And that was like one of the most fun things I've ever shot.
Fun. I wanted to see it so bad.
Someday we'll get it edited.
Someday.
But I shot everything by myself. I was lighting by myself. Like I lost a toenail on that. Yeah. Because it was like running around all day, like moving lights, and we shot 11 pages in one day. But
I just love that you taught the kids. Was it Iron Maiden?
I did. I made them learn Iron Maiden.
You made them learn Iron Maiden.
I made these girls like the type of girl I was growing up, like a total tomboy horror kid. And they're all like girly girls. And so I dressed them up in like clothes that I wore. And I made them learn the lyrics to Iron Maiden. And I made them sit around a table, like camera in their face, screaming the lyrics.
It's so good.
And it was the cutest moment.
Maybe you enlightened one of their minds to love metal.
Doubtful.
Well, on that note, I think that is a perfect segue to start getting into Deathgasm. What do you say?
2 teenage boys unwittingly summon... I don't know, that's not the right voice for this. 2 teenage boys unwittingly summon an ancient evil entity known as the Blind One by delving into black magic while trying to escape their mundane lives.
I love having a voiceover artist on the podcast. You're just like, no, this isn't the right voice. It's just like a whole new character.
Wrong tone. I mean, I do think this movie, sometimes teen movies are kind of hard watching them a little bit older, but this movie just appeals to anyone who felt like a displaced outcast.
100.
Anyone who's had to move and start a new school or make new friends, which I wish it was that easy, making a new friend in 5 minutes, or just like not matching the rest of your family or the family that you're stuck with at the time. That, I don't know, right from the beginning, you were just like instantly with this character. And I think that's a testament to a really great storytelling, directing, and acting. It's just, we already feel for this kid. We already identify with this kid.
I love that actor. He is so good. I love watching him. He's great at that character. And yeah, he does that character, the writing and his acting and everything does capture that really well. And like I mentioned before, I'm not necessarily the metalhead. I appreciate it and I like some of it, but this is from my other half. He lent this to me. He's the metalhead, and he said he connected to this movie so much because he could tell that it was written by somebody who knows their loves it, because the way he described what metal makes you feel is so accurate. He says something like, it makes you feel like somebody understands you in the world.
Like understands your pain and your rage.
Yeah.
And I remember I got really into a lot of this stuff, into punk and hardcore and metal, and I really dived into horror movies. I had some really traumatic stuff happen to me when I was 14, and it kind of changed me at the core of who I was, like my DNA. And I found new friends, and I had to sort of find an outlet for the pain and the rage that I was feeling at that point in my life. And I remember taking up skateboarding and finding my tribe. And it was like, it wasn't even kids I went to school with. It was like kids from like a town over. And I remember going to like the local like music store and seeing like the punk show flyers on the wall and doing the same thing of looking through records like next to someone and
King Diamond.
But it's an interesting subgenre to the world of finding your people. And yeah, it does speak to all outcasts, but specifically I think to the kids who were into dark stuff and nobody quite understood it.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what music does for you, is you can find who you are, and then you find certain people who like your tastes, and you find that maybe we're all drawn to that for similar reasons, even if it's not the exact same. Everybody has something where this music speaks to them.
Generally, there's something very theatrical about metal.
No, I mean, I remember the first time I saw Gwar, I was like, what is going on up there? And everything was going on up there, mostly blood, which I think possibly is what drew me. I was like, what are they spitting on the crowd? I'm going to go over there. It was at Riot Fest the first time I saw them. And I think they were like decapitating Snooki.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain that that's exactly what they were doing. But it was a whole show. And like, even, I guess this probably isn't metal, but it's like when you go to a Rob Zombie concert, he's putting on an entire show. You go any of these bands, it's not just a couple people singing on a stage. Like, it is a spectacle. It's a performance.
Yeah, it's presentational for sure.
Yeah.
Without further ado, let's go behind the scenes and chat with a guy who can give us the real insider scoop. He works in VFX on some of the biggest movies made in the last 20 years, but in the horror community, we know him as the guy who puts the dye in DIY metalist horror. He blends horror, comedy, and action into pitch-perfect kinetic masterpieces of gory perfection. We're chatting with writer-director Jason Lei Howden. Welcome to the Pillow Fright Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
All right, so we ask everyone that comes on the show a couple of baseline questions. What was the first horror movie you ever saw?
I think the first horror movie I saw was a film called Wolven, which was like, it's sort of like an 80s, I think early 80s, maybe late 70s werewolf movie. And yeah, I saw it when I was way too young. It was on TV in New Zealand. And what really, I really remember like this thing where the wolf like just decapitated this guy with one chomp and the head fell off and was still talking. It's just that scene stayed with me. I watched it again recently, and it's not that great a movie, but like it's at the time it was like, holy this.
They stick with you.
Yeah, it's hard to rewatch the movies from your childhood.
Some of them hold up super well, and then some of them, it's disappointing. Sometimes I just don't want to try rewatching some films because I know they won't hold up.
What was the first movie that really scared you?
I think the first movie that really scared me was, I think, Return to Oz, which I saw in the cinema, and just I think a lot of like 80s kids would have the same story. Their parents took them to see this kids movie about Wizard of Oz that looked really whimsical, and then it starts off with Dorothy getting electroshock therapy in a mental institution. And then it gets worse from there. There's like those wheelie things.
Oh, those guys are the worst.
The legs.
And then the decapitated head witch, and she was like changing her head. And it's just like, what is going on? Like this. I mean, it's a great film as well, but like it should be R18.
Yeah, totally a kids movie. On something completely different. Who was your first horror crush?
I'm gonna have to go with like Barbara Crampton. When I started getting into the VHS, it's interesting because whenever you got VHS back then, like any sort of like provocative scenes that would always glitch out because of people pausing them.
Oh.
But I think Barbara Crampton, Reanimator, especially From Beyond, where she like starts off as like the scientist with the glasses, and then she like she comes out in that dominatrix kid. I'm like, oh my god,
as you do.
But she's just amazing, and just she's also got that sort of like girl next door sort of presence, but then she's sort of like really bold as well, and it's so great seeing like she's so busy with her career these days, and it's so great to see her just blow up and just amazingly like positive person in the horror community. So yeah, I love her.
She's a vampire.
Yeah, definitely.
She played the Black Hymn for Eternal Beauty.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah.
As a nerdy metal kid myself that grew up in a small town, there's so much of Deathgasm that just feels incredibly authentic. Were you a metal kid growing up?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, both films are like pretty much autobiographical, but the first one especially. And it's sort of weird because I watch films where a lot of films with metalheads are always the bully. Like they put like a vest or like a metal t-shirt on the bully, and like they're instantly like the dumb sort of bully kid. And that was totally not my recollection of how things went down, especially in the 90s. Metalheads were like, it was sort of post, like I think 80s where the glam rock was really cool. It's cool to have long hair and everything. And I think in the 90s that had sort of gone away a bit. So I was a long-haired kid with a Deicide t-shirt on, walking down the street, like it was in sort of this redneck town, you'd get people yelling out of their car, or you'd get like physically assaulted on the street. It was like it wasn't cool. It wasn't the cool thing at the time. Like grunge was cool. So that was my sort of like experience growing up. We were like the nerdy kids. We were like hang around and play Dungeons and Dragons in the classrooms, in the library, like during lunchtime. And yeah, so the first film was based on that, like being an outcast, sort of struggling to fit in a small town, and then sort of finding your people, eventually finding a small group of other metalheads and sort of banding together. I met like a guy who was sort of like Zach, like he was like the sort of strong, good-looking metalhead who like when I got picked on at school, he would just come up and just punch like bullies out. He was like incredibly toxic, like the real Zach, but kind of like sort of the guy that when you're like 14, 15, you look up to as well, and you don't realize till later, well, that guy was a bit of an asshole, but. It just felt good to have someone that you could talk about like Slayer with, and who had your back in a fight, and yeah, so that's where sort of that came from in the film.
I love the scene where they meet at the record store, and it's such a real thing where like you're standing next to someone, you're picking up the most deep cut thing, like testing them.
Yeah.
Also trying to show that you're cool and you know what's up. And he puts a point.
Yeah, I'm super awkward when I'm in record shops, and I always get into a situation where someone else is looking through the section I want to look in, and I'm just pretending to look through other albums. And once I was flicking through and I saw Number of the Beast, and I didn't have it, and then some other guy just grabbed it. Yeah, yoink, and went up to the counter with it. So there is like this whole etiquette with like record shopping that goes with that. But I have it in the similar situations where you're looking through albums and you're trying not to spend too long looking at something that's too uncool. Like I like new metal, but it's one of those things where it's not like that cool to like new metal to be like looking at core albums or whatever in shops. But yeah, again, you shouldn't really be ashamed of what you like. It's fine.
Exactly.
There's a lot of Power Rangers in this movie. What was the casting process like, and what specifically led to that choice?
It was totally coincidental, but I loved Power Rangers when I was a kid, so it brought me a lot of joy. Actually, because both Milo and they used to film Power Rangers in America, and there'll be American kids, and when they put the masks on, there's Japanese stunt artists. And then they found out it was cheaper to do it in New Zealand. So both Kim and Milo were Power Rangers. I think different seasons from what I can gather. But it's funny because Milo, who plays Brody, actually we had to wrap early one day because in Canada it was for Deathgasm 2, he was flying over to a Power Rangers convention. Even though I don't think he's been in Power Rangers for 15 years or something, it's still fresh in people's minds. Like there's still a fan base, which is really cool. He really embraces it. Like he loves like the chatting to Deathgasm fans and chatting to Power Rangers fans. It's just like that thing where you're like, if whatever you do in life, if other people dig it, then it's awesome. It's great that he's not like, some actors can get like a bit like, oh, I don't want to be known as like the Power Rangers guy. I'm too good for this. I want to do serious acting. And I think if you've got any sort of fan base, it's cool that he's just embracing it, and he's really lovely and kind to fans.
I love that.
Well, Deathgasm was made by winning a competition. Is there more that you could tell us about how it came to be and working with Aunt Timpson?
Yeah, that was all so weird looking back on it. And also, I was on the third Hobbit film, and we were on crunch time from day one. So we'd been working almost a year, like doing 80-hour weeks. And I was burnt out. I'd done the other two films as well. And I was just watching Gandalf on green screen, like day in, day out, was just driving me a bit crazy. So I was just doing like short films and music videos in my spare time. And this competition came up. I pitched like 4 ideas, and Deathgasm was the one where I was like, man, I'm never going to choose this one because this is the hardest one. This is going to be like a complete clusterfuck to like. And then that was the one they chose. And we went through all these like things where you'd have a log line, you make a poster and you'd submit it, and you do a log line, a synopsis, and they sort of would whittle down the people. And we somehow won, which was amazing. And it was like I think American, it was like $150K for the time, which was like, I mean, pretty awesome. I'm friends with like really low budget filmmakers who make films for like $5,000 or $10,000. So I shouldn't complain about $150,000. But for the ambition that was in the film, like all the gore effects and everything, it was very tight. But at the time, I sort of quit my job and it was never like a serious, like this is going to be like a career thing, or I never thought people in America would play it South by Southwest. There was never any. I think because we never really thought anyone would watch it, we didn't really care. It was just about having fun ourselves. I used to read Fangoria when I was a kid, and I'd read about Toby Hooper making Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how hard it was, and Evil Dead, and how crazy it was on set, and all these behind the scenes stories. I'm like, man, I want some behind the scenes stories in my life. And yeah, I definitely got some. So, but there was never any pressure about like it had to be good. Like it was. No, we weren't trying to make a good movie. We were just trying to have fun and piece something sort of together. And yeah, it was really cool. Winning the competition, it turned out to be quite life-changing. I mean, I'm still doing visual effects. I've managed to do 3 films now. So I mean, I'm incredibly lucky. I know it's hard to make a feature film. I've got friends that are still pitching, and it's getting that foot in the door, and that turned out to be the foot in the door for me. So I'm incredibly grateful to Aunt Timpson for putting on the competition. And
maybe I'm wrong, so correct me if I am. He went to Dark Sky and got you more financing, correct, for the movie?
I think there might have been some for post, or maybe Dark Sky put in half and the New Zealand Film Commission put in half. I think the New Zealand Film Commission sort of matched like what Dark Sky were putting in. And that was cool because we automatically had a distributor in the United States as well. So that's the big thing, like when you've got an indie film, is like finding a distributor, finding someone who's going to get it out to people, and we already had that. So I mean, very, like, looking back on it, really lucky. I didn't get paid for it, but at the same time, it's I never expected to get paid for it. It was one of those things like, let's just do this. Like my day job was visual effects, so I was like, it was just like about the experience. And yeah, but and was kind of like a bit of a hero of mine as well. He ran this film festival, like a strange film festival during the 90s and 2000s, and like a movie marathon, and would just play these completely insane films. Like, and I think there was one film that was like banned, and he was fighting with the New Zealand censors office to play it, and was going to go to jail and all this stuff. And so to me, he was like a bit of a madman, and but someone who was like really fighting for freedom of anti-censorship, like being able to watch crazy films if you want to watch crazy films. Not like this was like pre-internet, so now you can just watch anything. It's fine. But back then it was hard to watch these films.
He gave me one of my first directing breaks with I think he was a producer on ABC's A Death or something like that.
Oh yes, yeah.
And he hired me to direct on that. So
that's so cool.
I've never met him, but he seems awesome.
Yeah, no, I love the ABC's of Death. I wish they'd do like another one because there were two, weren't there? I love it. It felt like film festivals. How you go to a strange film festival, watch like a bunch of short films. I love like that sort of, and it's not even like an anthology. And you finished watching it. Oh my god, what did I just watch? I just saw so much.
A lot of metal horror movies, they usually portray the male characters kind of as this badass, aggressive sort of character. And you tend to write more nerdy, mild-mannered characters. And you also poke a little fun to the genre with a nod to Call of the Winter Moon music video. Where did you get your inspiration for this?
It's so funny. It was kind of crazy in the early 90s. The music scene was just wild back then. And you sort of think of them as, man, these guys are hardcore. Looking back on it, they're just a bunch of nerds. They're nerdy teen kids, like just sort of who got caught up in it all. But like I remember, I think Glenn Benton, I read an interview with Glenn Benton talking about he met Euronymous and he was wearing like a Party City, like like Halloween cape.
Oh my god, I just saw that.
Yeah, it was like
that was like just on the internet a few days ago.
Yeah, that's right. So it's just they are just like these nerdy. Yeah. There was like no girls involved, and they were just these like bunch of nerdy boys who just ended up like taking it a bit too seriously. And so just as a thinking about like, in terms of what would these New Zealand guys look like if they were trying to replicate that. And a lot of it was just like the actors just going off and having fun. Like it was all improvised. One of my favorite parts is when Dion starts like wanking the swords. Like he just started doing that. It's just like, it was all improvised. I wrote a bit of it in the script, but we just let them loose in a forest. And I mean, it was, I think that was part of the fun of it, was like seeing these Kiwi kids pretending to be like these like Scandinavian hardcore kids, and it just doesn't really work. And I think a lot of like Brody's sort of nerdiness comes from that's myself as well. Like I'm sort of just like a nerd basically, and so that's reflected in there. It's funny because I go to metal gigs and it is mainly that. There is a bunch of like bearded 40-year-old men just like sitting there with their beer bellies. There is, and it is different as well. It depends on the act. It's like a death metal band or more of a stoner metal band. But I kind of love that as well. I don't think it's one thing I've always appreciated about metal is like the camp, the sort of the costumes, and I don't think you should take it too seriously, like sort of pin too much on it.
Definitely some theater to it.
Oh yeah. And that's what I love. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I've always had a thing for sort of like musicals and theatrics and like bands like Queen that go really over the top with their, and I think that relates to like black metal as well, and a lot of like metal bands when they have a big stage performance and they've got like, goat heads and stuff, and that's, even though it's sort of like hardcore, it is still like kind of camp and theatrical.
Yeah.
So as a filmmaker, you have such an amazing kinetic style. You're so good at knowing where to put the camera and to really make these amazing dynamic shots. How do you set up a scene? Is that something that you're doing with your DP and just be like, oh, let's do this and this? Or are you thinking on your feet? How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just, I need to like keep the camera moving. And I think I actually read it was a Roger Corman quote about like, if you've got no money, it's free just to move the camera. And I think we all sort of like subconsciously realize that when we watch a film that's locked down. And so I've always sort of tried to do that, and it's interesting because it's the thing that those are the fun shots, the ones that drop off the shot list when you've got a really tight schedule and it's we're just going to do this, and just shoot it like incredibly quickly and incredibly economically. But yeah, part of it also is it's like completely obvious, but like Evil Dead 2, like I watched that when I was like 13, and it felt like more than just horror. There was something like the way that the Sam Raimi was moving the camera and editing and stuff. It felt, wow, he's doing something different with filmmaking that I haven't really seen before at that age. I hadn't seen before anyway. And I was always incredibly inspired by that. And Peter Jackson as well, like even his early films, there's so much movement. And yeah, I mean, that really, helps with a low budget film. It helps make it give it production value, I guess. And yeah.
I want to talk about the gore of it all, but there are so many amazing practical effects. I mean, the thickness of the throat slit for one, and I don't know if we can say this online, but what takes the jaw off.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
With all this practical effects work and your VFX background, with that limited budget, like what choices did you have to make all this happen?
Yeah, well, that was the first one was really interesting because I had written in all these gore set pieces, and then there was a company called Main Reactor that did the effects for Evil Dead 2013, which was shot in Auckland. And they just basically had like a bunch of like the evil Mia and all these like dummies and gags, but in a mothballed way. And they were like, oh, you guys can use these. So I went back and wrote around what we had. And yeah, it seemed to work out pretty well. I mean, it's interesting. Like I always get asked, like I'm doing the second film, I'm like, they had this thing called Super Blood where someone was like asking me, how much blood do you want? Do you want like bitter blood or medium blood or super blood? I'm like, always super blood. Always.
Every time.
Don't bother asking me again. Like and just like, hopefully it all turns out right. But I'm just editing the film at the moment. But it's one of those things where they're like, well, this wouldn't bleed that much. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. I always view it as like a Looney Tunes cartoon, like especially display the comedy. They're not really watching it for realism, but they want to have some fun. They want to see something crazy. And so I always just approach it like, if this was a Bugs Bunny cartoon, how you wouldn't sit there and go, oh no, he doesn't crush and become a xylophone. That doesn't make any sense. It is a cartoon. And I love films like the Terrifier films that are very like gore, nasty gore. But whereas I think Deathgasm is very different, where it's more like a cartoon. It's more something that you're not really meant to like kind of cringe at. You're meant to just like to laugh at. And I sort of reference on Evil Dead 2 how there was that headless puppet with the chainsaw. There's wrestling in the work shed. And it looks completely ridiculous, but you just sort of laugh and go with it. And it just, I love like gore effects like that. Films like this, at least, that make a lot of sense.
Nice.
Yep.
I was noticing on this rewatch when everyone starts becoming like possessed zombies, you do a lot of sunglasses. I'm like, Terrifier 2.
Yeah. I think we actually, because Zach, we end up using I was going to use something kooky for him. I end up just using the actor's own Ray-Bans to protect their eye when they're in public. They're trying to pass as like humans, and they're like dressing them up. And so, because obviously we killed off half the cast in the last film, and then we're like, oh man, we really like those actors. We want to bring them back. So spoiler alert, we sort of wanted to bring them back. And we had magic pages as well to do that. So yeah.
You have so many amazing bands on the soundtrack of this movie, but more particularly, the real get is Emperor. How did you get them and all those other bands on board?
I think I literally was just spamming bands and getting rejected by 99% of them. And then there was like 1% of bands who were really cool. And we're really hoping to get them on the soundtrack again. And The Nights That Eclipse is like my favorite black metal album. I've still got the tape. Like I must have played it like hundreds of times. But yeah, for me, that was just like the highlight. I think we've got a few sort of big death metal bands on the soundtrack for this as well, which is really cool. But I think it's hard because even though we've got a bit more of a budget for the second film, we don't really have the licensing rights for bands are very extremely expensive, and they get very like crazy. So they've got to be like, you get the rights for America, but not like Britain and all this stuff, and it's very hard. So what I really liked about, I think, both soundtracks, including like a lot of indie bands as well, like a lot of underground metal bands who normally wouldn't. There's this Taiwanese grindcore sort of band with these really like offensive, silly song names, and it's just so cool because they wouldn't get like a to be on a film so much, but it's like I really want to have like broad spectrum of going from that to some sort of hair metal to like stoner metal to death metal, and just have the pantheon of like genres on there, and not get too black metal or too death metal or too extreme. Have some that's like kind of, you know, a bit more sort of like 80s traditional.
It's like your own like personal mixtape for a movie.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we were really lucky. We got like a vinyl release for the last film, so hoping to do that again for the second film, and possibly even I think a Spotify. I think someone made a Spotify like playlist as well, so you can actually listen to them on Spotify anyway. But just try and get the soundtrack out there to as many people as possible. But that's like the most fun thing for me, is making a soundtrack. And yeah, I love that, especially in the 90s when part of the experience would be like you'd go to Mortal Kombat and then you'd get the soundtrack, or Spawn, get the soundtrack, and like Fear Factory, and discover all these like bands. I think there's not really that. I don't really get that much anymore these days.
Do you remember back in the day when you'd get an album and then you'd have to go through the special thanks section to like find other bands? And
yes. Yes. Yeah, that was so cool. Because like you'd save up for weeks to buy an album and you'd get your money's worth. You'd read all the liner notes, everything. Like nowadays it's so disposable, but back then I'd go through the cassette tape notes, and yeah, you're right. Like you discover like, Pantera like thanking Typo Negative or something, and you're like, oh, who's Typo Negative? And you're like, oh, this is awesome.
Something that we end up talking about way more than we probably should on the show is satanic movies tend to go to this almost like Reagan era propaganda. And I think you do a really good job at not doing that. Is that something that you were conscious of in making like a metal sort of satanic movie?
Yeah, I mean, I love films that do talk about that era as well. I was a bit young. I sort of was aware of that stuff, the anti-Dungeons and Dragons, moral panic, and all these moral panics. I was in the 90s. It was more like there was like the Marilyn Manson moral panic, and there was a few others like Beanie Babies. I'm not sure if that's I don't know. It was so weird. Like everyone just getting so caught up in this like irrelevant, and just that sort of backfired on them, because I remember like buying my first Cannibal Corpse album, and it had the parental guidance warning on it. Oh, this is going to be awesome. Like so it didn't really work. But yeah, I didn't really consciously avoid it so much. I mean, I'm not sure if it was kind of an American thing a little bit. Like I think in New Zealand, New Zealand's sort of like both more liberal and a bit more conservative in some ways. Like it's interesting because when we were filming in Canada, we got to film in a cemetery, and we filmed in a cemetery and a church. Back in New Zealand, it's almost impossible to film in a cemetery, especially if you're doing doing something that's a bit metal or a bit horror. They get really offended. My family's buried in these cemeteries as well. Why do you get to say who films in them? It's kind of crazy. And we still haven't legalized weed. I'm still like blown away when I went to Canada. There's a weed shop on every corner. It's like, this is. It's crazy. It's no one like bats an eyelid. It's still very much illegal here. So, but we're very liberal in other ways, and yeah. So it's just one of those things. I guess we'll catch up eventually.
Well, there's so much love from the fans for this film. I mean, you kind of already talked about your actors talking to their fans and really appreciating that. So, what's it like for you to see this whole universal love?
I mean, it's just amazing. There's this like group that do like this fanfic where they ship Zack and Brody, and they draw them as these sort of anime, sort of like gay lovers, and they've got like, this whole scene, and it's just, I love it. It's man, maybe I should have, maybe there's a story point that I missed when I wrote it, But it was just like, just the fact that they took something that I created, came out of my head, and then they made it their own. That's awesome. It's so cool that they care enough to spend time drawing that. It's the biggest flattery that I think and it's something that's kept me going in hard times when, you have those times where you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Nothing's coming together. And then you sort of see a post of someone got like a tattoo or something. That's what sort of keeps you going. And I think, these big Oscar winning films that make millions of dollars and get prestige and critically acclaimed, but you don't see many people with a Daniel Day-Lewis tattoo on them or something, or wearing like the Oscar winning film from a few years ago as a t-shirt. So to me, that's really special, and I love the horror community for that. And the other people that we ran a Kickstarter for the second film, and they got us over the line. And so it really is like the fans. We put it out there to the fans. Did you want to see a sequel? And they're the ones that said yes. So yeah, it's so cool. I think metal and horror have got that in common. Like with the fan bases, you're never going to find fan bases in the world that are more passionate than metal and horror. I've been to quite a few festivals. You go to these like the fancy film festivals, and you're a bit like you tell people what film you've made, and they sort of the other directors look at you, what the f- are you doing? And then you go to like Fright Fest in the UK or like these other film festivals, and you're like almost like a celebrity. That's so cool. And it makes you feel what you're doing has a purpose, and there's an audience for it. And then that's awesome. And yeah, I'm really honored to be a part of it, really.
So while we have you, can we talk a little more about Deathgasm 2? No spoilers. I know the jury needs to get it made with some comic books in between. Can you talk us through a bit of the history so far and how you eventually got it funded?
Yeah, it's interesting because someone pointed out that we filmed it exactly 10 years after filming the first one, which is incredibly crazy. I had actually written the script before I got a grant to write a second sequel script before the first one had done the festival circuit. So it's interesting how it sort of evolved over the years to sort of stay relevant. But yeah, I went and did another film, Guns Akimbo,
which rules so hard.
Oh, thanks. It was a very hard film to make and everything. And then it went through a few iterations. We got some producers on board, and we eventually settled on the Kickstarter thing, and then we were going to film it here in New Zealand, but it turned out that we were going to get, firstly, there was like a tax break thing in Canada, not just Canada, but Saskatchewan, Canada, which is not Toronto and not Vancouver. It's like Regina. So there's not a big film sort of community over there, but the film community that is there is really passionate and great. And also the clincher for us that was the practical effects were going to be a lot cheaper to do in Canada. So that was like, wow. The film really hinges on that we got a quote to do the practical effects in New Zealand, which was like way higher than in Canada. So we went with that, and it was amazing. We got the same practical effects house that Steve Kostansky, who does Psycho Gorman and is doing the Deathstalker film as well, like his effects house. So they just did some amazing stuff for us. Steve himself was like, he'd send videos to me of him like testing out gore rigs, and it was phenomenal getting those guys involved. And it was just like, so for the first time, Guns Akimbo, we had a bit of makeup effects, but this is the first time whatever I wrote got made into these gore rigs. So it was so some of the set pieces are pretty wild. Hopefully, I'm so desensitized, so I'm like, it'll be interesting to see what people make of it. If they think we've gone too far or far enough, or my family members just think I'm a creep. So it's just like, they're like, I'm not even going to watch your film. They're too weird. Yeah, there's no listen at this time, but I don't know. It's like might have gone even further down the spiral. I don't know, but it's sort of like the film is a bit of a Gremlins 2 sort of like sending up the first film, a bit of a parody of the first film a little bit. Everyone's older, more washed up. Still, Brody's still a metalhead, but he's like unemployed and he's like living in the past. And this is kind of the setup. And so he's trying to get the band back together and decides that the smartest way to get the band back together will be to like, he's still got like this magic musical pages to resurrect his old band members. And it all goes basically. as you can imagine,
What was it like getting the whole cast back together, or as much of the cast as you got back together after 10 years?
it was amazing. They were, they just all so fantastic and just so into it as well. We had times when we'd gone over on a few nights, like we're shooting at like 4 a.m. and the whole crew was exhausted and everyone wanted to give up, and the cast were like, we can keep going, guys, and it's like really through their tenacity and their just, their love for the project that we got through it. Really, it was really cool to see like the clash of cultures between the New Zealanders and the Canadians as well, because we're both like smaller countries with a big brother country like Australia and America, United States, who get all the attention. So we're both like little brother countries. But yeah, the Canadians they are just so kind and so polite and lovely. And like the Kiwis, maybe we're like a little bit more boisterous. Let's just say that. And especially a few of the cast members. But yeah, I mean, everyone had a really good time. It was really cool. Like there were times when I was in a real graveyard in the middle of the night shooting with like zombies, and there was a fog and like lightning and stuff. I'm like, man, this is the favorite of anything I've shot. This is like my favorite day of shooting. There were moments like that I just, you have to pinch yourself. You're like, man, I'm so lucky. This is so much fun. And yeah, so hopefully that fun resonates on screen as well. Like I'm really optimistic. I am always the person that just like worries so much about how things are going to come together as well. But I think if you're a fan of the first one, yeah, you should be a fan of the second one. And I think we've gotten a little bit bigger. We've got some like really cool cameos from the music and wrestling world as well, which was just like phenomenal for me to meet some of my heroes and get to direct them.
Cool. When can we expect the release?
Hopefully mid next year, which will be the 10-year anniversary of the first film as well. So it's amazing, like what the actors were all in good condition. I was a wreck. Like in 10 years, my eyesight's gone. I'm just like so tired. I got really sick on the second day of shooting, and at lunchtime, I had to like go back to my hotel and have a nap. Like, so I think it was food poisoning or something, but it's yeah, we'll see if we've got enough fuel in the tank to like do like another sequel. But I mean, I'd love to. Yeah, if this one's well received, yeah, we'll see. I'm always like, if I get to do another film, then that's amazing. So we'll see what happens.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I know you're in post. I felt bad even asking you. But yeah, we're such huge fans of your work. And personally, I like director to director, I wish I could be you.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And yeah, I have to remind myself that it is hard. Like there were times when every time I finish a film, I'm like, I'm not going to do another one. That's probably the last one ever. And so when another one happens, I'm like, yes, like it is, because it's really hard out there. And I think after the first Deathgasm, I've got this big folder of like projects I pitched for. And it's got 50 films in it of all these lookbooks and scripts and all this 50 sort of failed things, and then one goes through. I'm not sure how much longer I've got. Yeah, I can keep doing that. But when you get there on set and you get to do a gore gag or something, it makes all the stress worth it. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, but thank you. And where can our listeners find you online?
Usually Instagram is the one I probably check the most. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but I don't really check them much. It's funny because like Kim Crossman was doing all this TikTok stuff on set where they jump and change costumes and all this, and I'm not really into that, but it's go you. So even though it's not for me, I'm sort of like down with it.
Cool. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah,
this was great.
Oh, awesome, guys. Great chatting. Yeah, all the best, and yeah, keep in touch.
So our movie starts with our main character Brody, who his dad, I believe, has passed away. His mom is institutionalized for blowing Santa. And he is moved in with his aunt and uncle in a small New Zealand town. And they are conservative Christian folks. And he does not fit in at school.
Mm-mm. He has a pretty jerk cousin.
Oh, that guy.
What was his name? I forgot.
I want to say it was like David or something.
There is a David.
Yeah, I think it was a David.
Something like that.
And
Also, with this one, we are just going to dive into it head first with spoilers. We're just going to talk all about that. So if you have not seen the movie, go ahead and watch it and come back, because this will not be a spoiler-free discussion. It will be all spoilers.
It's like it's a sort of like a montage of shots of him starting in this new school, of getting bullied, getting beaten up by his cousin and his cousin's friends, and making friends with the D&D kids.
That warmed my heart. That felt very Zombieland meets Shaun of the Dead style when they do that, the quick cuts with the just introduction.
And there's a lot of Shaun of the Dead in this movie to me.
Yeah.
I actually really liked all of the animation stuff that they added in. I mean, obviously they have that this kid is an artist, but even the opening credits were so active. And I thought that this movie had a really good energy, that it just kept going, because obviously with the comedy aspects and the metal aspects, but there's movies that are metal that don't have that energy to it, but it kept the same energy level throughout the whole thing. Like there were highs, but I never felt that there was like a dip or a low. So
it also got very dramatic. It made me cry a couple times.
It's a very kinetic movie. But yeah, I love those the drawings of each character as they're introduced. I love when he gets to meet the other main character, Zach, and they meet at this record store trying to be like one-upping each other. They're like little measuring contest of who likes cooler records.
It was like tarot reader randomly at the record shop. I was like, that's the best gig. It's just a record shop. Why not?
But yeah, their instant bromance. I love it. And he's also one of those things where Zach is kind of a bad influence on Brody.
Yeah. Like, he's the bad boy.
He instantly convinces him to break into an abandoned house and stand watch, where we get to meet Ricky Daggers.
Ricky frickin' not Iggy Pop Daggers.
Who is in Hacks and Sword. And because they show at the record store that the Hacks and Sword record is worth a lot of money, and there's only 666 ever made.
Yeah.
So they're going to steal Ricky Daggers' record, which is bold, sirs, bold.
As he's sleeping and holding it.
Yeah, this man is not living a rock star lifestyle.
No, he's like in a cave. It looks like he's in a cave.
It's methy.
It's part of the rock star lifestyle. You gotta go into vampire mode every once in a while. I think it fits.
But as they're trying to rip this record out of his hands, a very well-dressed, not metal-looking guy comes in, and he's protected, and we get our first kill.
That's a good one.
Oh, love a first kill. They don't, I think it was within the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's very early on. Very bright, thick red. Beautiful.
Yeah, he gets his throat is cut.
It's deep. There's always the one from the front, but I like that this one was, you really get to see all the throat, and you get to see the esophagus and everything that gets cut, and a lot of the thickness in there is really nice. It's well played.
It's a deep cut, like the band is.
And I also like the next kill with corporate bra.
Yeah,
but I do like his little demons where they fuck up the kill.
That's
and
so funny.
I love
do
that
it
it's
again.
like this white background, like everything is clean and pristine, opposed to what we've seen so far, which is gritty and grungy.
Yeah, no, I love when he tells them to do it again. They're just like, what?
They're like, okay.
And then they put the heads back on the body, and he's just like,
Get a tarp this time.
Her head pops up.
I mean, blood does not come out of rugs, so it's you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, what kind of rug? Some expensive rug that could not be ruined.
I mean, but I don't know. I think that there's some of the people that experience the deaths where I was like, but did they deserve it? Because the teacher in the scene where he's in the classroom and he's doing his drawings. That's really nice shading on the demon. I was like, look at how supportive he's being. He gives him detention, but it's sarcastic supportive, but at the same time, could have been way worse. He could have had a nun wrap his fingers or something with a ruler. So I was like, I don't hate the teacher. He's just being a teacher, and this kid's not paying attention in class. But
Russian takes no prisoners. It makes it sad.
So Brody finds the black hymn inside the record, which the record itself isn't in there. It's a Rick Astley record. He got Rickrolled.
Yeah. I'm so mad.
Oh man, it's Rick Astley.
Rick Astley. Middle. That's so middle.
I wish I had a cool accent.
I know, it makes it so much better. The accents make this so much better. It just
Right.
makes it, I love Kiwi accents.
Oh. But yeah, at this point, Zach and Brody have decided they're going to start a band. I don't think that any of them are any good.
Oh my gosh.
I felt that was really nice of him to include those guys that he already was like, these guys are kind of lame and he's not into D&D, which like, same bro, I get it. It was nice of him to include them anyway. I mean, maybe it's because they were the only other people that he knew, but how great is it that the only other people you know also play 2 instruments-ish well?
I mean,
It's Dion, right?
Dion and Giles.
Dion Giles, the best name. I think it's so cute that Dion plays the keyboard.
No.
Just plunking away in a metal.
Yeah, but doesn't he look so good with his makeup and his glasses over them? I was like, weird, bold choice, sir. He's being true to him and then just trying to mix it up and like throw the beer cans at him. It's still very cute. Maybe they're as a group, their relationship's not great, but they're starting out. They're trying.
It's about as good as it can be. I mean, I grew up in a small town and my first band, which was called the Circus Monkeys, by the way.
It was.
And
Yes, it was.
I wanted it to sound like Bikini Kill, but the only 2 dudes I know who like played instruments wanted to be in System of a Down. So
We made it work.
I get the vibe. But yeah, they try to play the Black Hymn, and I think we get our first sort of, these pages that they found are spooky.
Yeah,
spooky
with the
baby.
dad, well, the stepdad, I guess. Not stepdad, what I get uncle, Jesus-loving uncle. Stop playing music! And they're
Just music.
like, he just turns it up and
Yeah.
which his transformations were kind of fun. It was like, this guy's going through it, but
Yeah.
just embrace the metal, man.
Oh my God. And Medina. I've got mixed feelings about Medina because when I was growing up, as I said, I was a tomboy metal chick and I looked probably the same as I do now as far as what I wore. And like the dudes, like the other, like the metal or horror dudes or whatever, all went for girls that looked like her, like the pretty girls and like the regular clothes. I had no idea. And I'm just like, really? You couldn't ask me out? Like, I like you don't have to change me. You don't have to do Grease over
Very
here.
Some kind of wonderful.
It's very Lisa Frankenstein, I think, gave that exact monologue. So,
Oh, really?
you not seen it?
I've seen it. I just don't remember it.
Oh, it's like that was like a whole thing online.
Oh my gosh, can I tell you guys a story that totally fits this? I'll be really quick, I swear. So it's weird. Recently, I woke up in bed and I remembered this guy when I was growing up who put on shows, and he was putting on a Further Seems Forever show with Chris Carrabba, and he banned me. And he said he said he hated me and he bullied me so bad. And I just remembered this out of nowhere. And I was like 16 when it happened. And then this week, out of nowhere, like I didn't even remember this dude's name. I didn't remember anything about him. I get a message on Facebook and it's like, hey, you probably don't remember me, but 20 years ago, I was a really big jerk to you and I just really want to apologize.
Oh my God.
He's like, I was watching a VHS of a show recently and I remember not letting you go. And I remember being horrible to you because honestly, I thought you were really cool and it made me feel inferior and insecure because I was never as cool as you. And I just want to apologize.
Wow.
I was like, first of all, you're a way bigger person than I'd ever be. But second of all, I was never cool. But anyway, moving back on. But yeah.
I don't know. I thought that she was she really seemed intrigued by it. And I liked the way that she watched his art get thrown away. Like you could tell from the get that that's what intrigued her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was obviously not super stoked to be in a relationship with douchebag David. But maybe she was just doing what she was supposed to do. And when she found
it's true.
taste, she was like, yeah, I like this life. I'm in. Because she goes hard. So I think I don't know. I didn't mind her. I thought she had some really cute, she's like waiting with her little sweater and like looking very sandy in grease.
Yeah.
Very, like the sweater was kind of fuzzy, super sandy in grease. And their ponytail. Oh, that was probably intentional. Sorry, now that I see it.
Oh, they try to make it like, I love, oh my God, the scene of them on the bench eating ice cream. It's so cute.
It's such a
And I
cute
mean,
scene.
she's got like a little bit of his makeup on
Yeah.
her face. I don't know. I liked her. I thought she just didn't know that this world existed and that maybe she could be a part of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, even with everything, Zach
is a
sucked.
that was such a bad friend. Obviously, he's a bad friend, but then he did that. And then the very next thing he does is say, who beat you up? I got your back. You don't have his back. You just stole his girl.
Yeah, that
rude.
was so.
And she was very vulnerable in that moment.
Oh,
But
he was bored. He was bored. That was his reason.
I don't think his reasoning was that he was insecure and he didn't understand why a girl would like this guy over him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so he needed to take it too. Their whole relationship was him being insecure. Because was he even that good on the bass, or was he just
that thing? Yeah.
Yeah, he just wanted to on Brody.
We all probably would have hooked up with Zach. Let's be real.
I think Zach was
thinking
cast.
that the entire time.
He looked like the Crow. Like once he put the makeup on, I was like, oh, I get where this is where your look is coming from, because it's, I don't know,
the corpse paint.
yeah. Well, yeah, but the corpse paint and the corpse paint they chose, except for the poor guy that got the cat.
And then the other dude is pissed because he just doesn't get it.
That's just metal to him. Yeah.
I mean, and it's based off like this music video from the mid 90s of these dudes. Granted, theirs is a little better because they have pyrotechnics in it, but it's still like dudes in the woods looking silly as.
I swear that there's a billion YouTube videos of dudes in the woods looking silly as. I probably know 8 people from my high school that recorded that exact same video.
Yeah. But so after Brody gets beaten up by his cousin because he sees him with Medina and he's jealous, and Zach betrays him, and then he decides to use these pages for his own gain because he thinks they'll bring him power. So they play the song, and this is our moment of no return. Everybody turns into zombie demons?
They're not zombies. They're demons.
They're demons.
They're possessed.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. They're so
cool.
much fun.
Yeah.
The dude with the heart glasses.
Yeah.
And then the teacher when he just turns around and like his pants but blood.
Oh, yeah. And then she's like, are you okay?
And then vomiting on that chick so much. I even love the uncle's aspirated blood where it was really foamy.
Oh, yeah, the foamy blood.
Kind of looked like aerated tomato soup, but I was like hungry. But the teacher was one where I was like, oh, I love him writing on the board too.
Oh yeah. It's just like
yeah. But I think the dad, Zach's dad, I think was the coolest demon transformation for me.
Yeah.
In the garage.
Cool one.
Oh yeah.
Because at first I was like, oh, they're all covering their eyes. Everybody's covering. Maybe it's something like if they don't take their eyes off, they won't fully transform.
Yeah.
And then they were like,
then
get this off, and he's like, I see you, and I was like, what the? That's awesome. So cheesy, but like perfect. And he's literally from Pan's Labyrinth, but way more fun. Or what's that one from Ah Real Monsters?
Ah Real Monsters. That's what I was thinking.
God.
Yeah. So just and I mean that whole scene was so crazy, and even Brody's got Zach's back, at least.
I know.
I mean, his little arc is interesting because he is very selfish and he has no interest in helping fight Aloth, the blind one. And,
that's where the eyes came from.
Yeah. They find out from the psychic at the record store that they only have until 3 a.m. to, they call it Rob Halperting the song, playing it in reverse, to send him back to hell or wherever he came from.
But I will also say, as much as we all hate Zach, his moment of his dad dying and his like reaction of just being like, I'm going to cry. No, I'm not. I'm just going to hit something. Just like, that's like really real. This kid's an asshole for a reason.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to like him. I don't want to give him that redemption. But at the same time, I'm like, he has some redeeming parts. He's just, I don't know. Everybody kind of sucks when they're a teenager. So it's fine.
Yeah.
But then this is when when they're like, we're gonna solve this, and then that's when she gets
her axe killed in the head.
That's when they're meeting up. You mean Medina's axe killed?
Because this is when they find out that the blind one is gonna take over someone's body. It has to be the darkest soul around them. So the dude, I forget his name. It's Awan or something.
Aeon is killed by Shauna.
Yes, by Shauna. And after she finds out that he's going to possess the most evil person around, this is when she goes, I'll give you the honors of explaining this death.
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about the parent. Well, we talked about one parent. We got rid of Zach's parent is gone, but now the parental figures for Brody have been transformed.
Yeah, they drive to his house to get the music, which blows away, and they find his aunt and uncle and their giant stash of
the church stuff.
It is a giant box of paraphernalia.
I loved them just being like, well, I guess we needed weapons, so let's go, and coming out swinging them like they're
He's like,
freaking
"What is
katanas
this?"
and like nunchucks.
I'm like, every time they hit the uncle in the face, I just think of how much fun that was to shoot because he's got him like in all the makeup. They're slowly.
Because it's new, right? This is brand new.
And action.
Oh, when he sticks it in his mouth.
That was so gross. I'd be like, come on, man.
disgusting.
You know that these aren't properly cleaned. There's also no level of clean that there could ever be.
Nope.
Even him coming in with the chainsaw, and then he trips, and I was like,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
buddy, you tried so hard. But her guts one was fun
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And then like stepping
Taking it
on
as-
them.
Yeah.
That I thought that was really because there's a lot of the guts coming out, but it was the extra mile of her like kind of just whatever, but like walking in them.
I love the shots before the guts come out where it's like Zach's face like this far from the chainsaw.
Yeah,
and
her mouth too.
Yeah.
Like the mouth cam.
Oh, the
Yeah.
mouth cam.
Yeah,
so
that mouth
cool.
cam.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Jason Lei Howden, I want to be you when I grow up.
they were because it was that energy. Is that entire scene was just like bam, every single thing down to double in the ears.
And the rabbit
So
spinning.
Powerful.
Someone got to build that. How much fun is that?
I know. I love it.
So we need them all to have functional
Different mechanism.
Yeah, that's so fun. But yeah, good way to get rid of parents.
Yeah.
Right? And they sucked.
Well, Anne never said a damn thing. She didn't. I don't
Guilty
think
by
she-
association.
Fine, but
association.
yeah, I don't think she had a single line. Maybe she didn't suck. Maybe the dad or the uncle just sucked extra hard. I don't know. Maybe that's what the double-sided was for. But I don't know. I think all of that, all of those fight scenes were really great.
So after their little bro spat,
The bro spat.
Brody and Zach find the sheets and then they reunite with Dion, Giles, and Medina at the school.
Yeah.
But then when Medina goes and sits next to him or he goes and sits next to her.
He sits next to her because we didn't mention earlier that because we said he was such a jerk because he was like making out with her and stuff, but that's because she came to Zach to give Brody a letter saying, "Meet me on the bench." Basically, I think she just wanted to tell him he liked him.
Mhm.
And Zach's like, "Okay, I will." That's the worst accent I've ever done. But yeah, Zach shows up instead of Brody, and he's like, "Yeah, you want me to tell you he's not interested?" And she's just like, "Oh, okay." And then he's like, "But I am," and just starts making out with her. He gives her his coat. He's just being
How
a jerk.
far do you think they went?
But based on her reaction, I don't think they went all the way, but I think there is definitely a lot of touching involved.
Yeah, I know. I definitely saw some like second base boob
There was some
squeezing or
second
something.
base going on, I think. At least
And
second
I know
base.
he makes some kind of joke about a girl like that will never let you go to fifth base. Or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
And he's like, "What's fifth base?" And yeah,
Yep.
but it kind of sounded like maybe in Zach's eyes she was quote unquote prudish.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they didn't bang is what I'm saying because
I was like, Zach,
just like,
you're so
fuck
cute. Don't do that because I think you're hot.
of course you do because you live for a red flag, Alyssa.
I'm
I
sorry,
swear.
but this is, I don't have one set exact type, but if there was one that I always gravitate towards, it's the musician, it's the metalhead.
I can tell you right now, if we lived in this world, you would go for Zach and I would go for Brody.
I can say that, yeah, I would go for both of them actually. But yeah, so that happened. So Medina was avoiding Brody in the middle, and he was like, "Why is she avoiding me? What's up?" And Zach, "It's okay." That was Australian.
I don't know what you're doing.
I don't either. I don't know where I am right now, Emma. I don't know what's going on.
Oh my god. So yeah, and then she's your hand, and she's like tending to him, and then he sees the jacket.
Oh yeah,
and he doesn't even need the words. It's just like, how'd you get Zach's jacket?
He's so good.
Oh, he's so good.
I love
him.
watching every minute of him on screen, and it's like he is that character.
Yeah.
I don't know if he is in real life, but he is that character in this movie. But yeah, she was just like, he lent it to me. And
She's
so,
all like,
yeah.
when he told me that you weren't interested in me.
Say what?
Oh, that was like instant rage. And like there was no doubt in his mind. There was no time that it took him to compute this. Like he knew Zach would do it. Like he makes a point to say at the beginning of the movie that Zach will steal anything that's not nailed down, then he'll rip up the rest. Like he has no moral code.
I don't know if you've experienced that before in life where you got betrayed by a good friend like that, but that is not a fun feeling.
Yeah, no, that would be icky.
That'd be very icky. But anyway, they discover that Zach was just being an ass and that there was an interest, so they came together to fight.
And then the remaining 4 go to Ricky Dagger's house to use the sound system to play the song backwards. But they are quickly confronted by the cult and their new leader, Shauna.
Shauna. That just sounds, I've said, ooh, Shauna. That just does not sound very metal.
Yeah. So they get to the house, to Ricky Dagger's house, and they're trying to put this song together on this massive sound system, but quickly confronted by Shauna and her cult members.
Yeah.
And they take them prisoner.
And then is the first one to pop out, because then the demons start popping up, and Ricky Dagger pops up at some point.
Yes. She's like, give me the pages. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
She holds the knife thing to Medina, and he's like, all right, here's the pages. She rips him right up in front of him.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that's when we get the return of Zach.
It's the return of the Zach. The return of the Zach. This is the worst.
Yeah, I don't know
dad
what the hell's
music.
happening.
The return of the Mac. Hello. Were you even in the 90s? God.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, return of the Zach. Full-fledged. Full geared up with chainsaws.
Yeah.
Very,
It's pretty badass.
that whole scene was so Lawnmower Dead Alive. That's like where he's just going in circles, just chopping everyone up.
Yes.
And it felt very, I'm assuming that was probably an intentional
Oh,
homage.
100.
And it was so good. Talk about get your aggression out.
Oh my gosh.
Chainsaw, a bunch of
Right?
possessed.
But it's sad because this is also the point where we lose Giles and Dion to the demons.
Oh my gosh. I didn't want to see his whole freaking spine come out with his head. That was very Predator of them to do that. That made me really sad.
I know.
And Giles just tried. He's like, ah, arm rips.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, but their names are on the cast list for the sequel, so
We'll see.
I'm not gonna spoil it for myself.
I know. I hope it's something new.
But so yes, then we're getting all the electricity, and Shauna is getting possessed by Aloth. Too many
Aloth. I know.
names in this
I know.
movie. So she's getting possessed by Aloth. Brody begins trying to play this hymn backwards, but
It's like, I don't even think it's in the right tune.
he is failing. He is hardcore failing. As all of his friends are dying around him.
Oh.
Aloth enters Shauna's body, but Zach quickly puts an end to that. Right through the and out.
Right through the
However, the rule is that Aloth will enter the darkest soul around.
And she wasn't the darkest soul.
No, well, now that she's gone, we turn around and it is Zach. Oh, not Zach.
Demon.
And he kind of looks like the Last of Us video game monster.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
It's a cool demon look.
It reminded me of one of the demons in Buffy. Just I can't say a specific one, but it just reminded me of something that would have been in season 6 or something of Buffy.
Yeah,
it made me very happy. But I just love how he realized that he's the dude. He's like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah,
like, this is pretty cool. That was very sad, though.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Yeah, so they have to try to get the notes. He's got to try to play it before 3 a.m. And it's like 5 to 3.
Yeah, it's like counting down.
Yeah.
And then, he's running around. He's saying he's going to kill Medina at this point, right?
Yes.
He's like cornering her.
He's got her cornered.
Yep. And then Brody plays the black hymn backwards, and he's like super metal, and his hair blows, and there's lights behind him, and super badass. That was such a moment.
Yes.
And then Zach falls and collapses, and you're like, no. And you think, but maybe he's won. I don't know. And he goes over to him, and he's coming back.
Yeah, he's trying to fight it, and he says, it's too strong. I can't.
He's like he sacrifices himself for the greater good of his friends.
He's like, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. He's not when he had the necklace with the razor.
With the razor that they did their like brother handshake.
Oh wait, what was it?
It's like
It's like, how do they do it? Like this. Wait. No, that's like shocker.
I feel like they're like this, but then like you do one horn and I do the other.
Oh. Is that it? Did we do it?
We'll figure it out later.
For
because
anybody
I'm just,
listening,
we're trying to do the handshake, but we're not
it just
coordinated
ended up
enough.
like the shocker. It didn't work. So
Where's Clint Howard when you need him?
oh,
That's an inside joke. He's not in.
didn't.
Oh God. Oh, anyway.
Anyway, I was very sad. I cried.
It is a moment, but that's how the main part of the movie ends. They've defeated the bad guys, and we cut to 6 months later or 2 months later.
I
2
think
months.
I thought it was 6, 5, 6.
I don't know. I can't. We're gonna say a few months later.
Under 6 months.
Anyway, we cut to a few months later, and Brody and Medina are like happy, and looks like they just got done hooking up, and she's got this new.
Got a big hair, all teased, got a metal shirt, and she's schooling him apparently.
Yes, on Cannibal Corpse vocalist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she gets up and she leaves, and he's laying in bed, and then all of a sudden we get that sort of Evil Dead moment where the lights start flashing and there's zooms and all this, and then it's a voice be like, "I'm gonna eat your soul" or something coming from the stair system, and then it's Zach's voice just be like, "Just kidding."
That was the best ending. I loved that ending so much because it did leave it open-ended, but it was also kind of heartwarming in a way.
It reminded me of Shaun of the Dead a little.
Yes.
Yeah.
That really reminded me of Shaun of the Dead.
Oh.
So I hope that in the afterlife he's his redemption has been met and he can continue that.
I hope he's just like haunting Brody every day.
Oh my gosh. They just like annoy each other and he's like, "Stop it!" It's so metal.
Oh man.
But, yeah, that's Deathgasm.
I am so happy we covered this movie.
Such a good movie.
And I'm so excited that we got to chat with Jason.
Yes, thank you again, Jason, for chatting with us.
my
That
gosh.
was amazing.
He is the
hearing
coolest
him.
guy.
Oh my gosh, come back. Please come back
Yes.
anytime.
Well, if you like this episode, you can get a longer version on our Patreon, along with other bonus content and fun stuff that we do.
Yes, you could find us on socials. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You could find a whole assortment of reviews, updates, news, just a bunch of different cool stuff on there.
So make sure to subscribe, do what you want with the bell.
Do what you want with the bell. And until next time, sweet screams, everyone.
And whatever you do,
Don't fall asleep first.